Here we go.
This is the Conversations with Jacquari podcast, real conversations on culture, business, and entertainment. What's up, everybody? I'm Jacquari Harris, the host of Conversations with Jacquari, and welcome to our very first episode, and thank you so much for tuning in. So for those who know me, and if you don't, I am the founder of the JMG Media brand, where I've had the privilege of interviewing many familiar names from music, TV, and film, from Kevin Hart and Jason Smollett to Pharrell Williams, as well as writing about a wide range of inspiring people. So, Conversations with Jacquari is my new platform where I'll be speaking with music artists, actors, and also entrepreneurs, brands, and other influential voices that shaping culture today. So, for this inaugural episode, I am very thrilled to say that we have Sheléa. Now, Sheléa is a Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, producer, pianist, and actress. She's been mentored by legends like Quincy Jones. She recently toured as a special guest with Stevie Wonder, and she's also starred in the Lifetime movie The Clark Sisters, First Ladies of Gospel. So in this conversation, we talked about a little bit of everything. We talked about her incredible career, her PBS special tribute to Aretha Franklin, and her latest EP, Spirit. You performed at some of the most prestigious venues in the world, including the White House. How has those performances shaped you as an artist and, your approach to performing?
You know, I have been so blessed. The White House performance came before I even had an album, before I had management. So I have had such a different career where so many incredibly impactful experiences happened at the beginning. And thankfully, by God's grace, I've been able to continue to have really great ones. But I don't know. I think when you do have that really early, you just realize that every performance is special. And so you really want to just give it your all every single time. You never know who's in the audience. But not even just that. I think just for me personally, there's this deep desire to always be present and take everything in. And so when you have opportunities like the White House, the Kennedy Center, Carnegie Hall, I just did Royal Albert Hall for the first time in 2022 and have been back ever since, every year. It's just one of those things where you're just like, wow, I want to be in the center of this right now and feel, get all the feels.
Very nice. Yeah, I can imagine so. And you've been mentored by so many legends, Quincy Jones, Stevie Wonder. What's one piece of advice that has been given to you over the years that still guides you today?
So many, so many. Q, what I always talk about with Q is just the way he was able to make you feel so special, even when you were in the room of legends. I remember going to his home many times, and it'll just be such an eclectic group of people, all
Hmm.
just like. Oh my God, there's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar over there, like just something so incredibly cool and random, and then Jay-Z's over there. But when he would talk to you, it's like you were the only person in the room. And I try to do that, with my interactions. Another thing that Q taught me is just always just leading with love and your true passion for what you do. And there's a quote he said, loosely quoted, but the idea is, if you are wanting to create anything, music, art, whatever, and your drive is for money or for fame, God has already left the room.
Hmm.
And that's something I really, really hold dear because, in this industry, if you're looking for those things, you're going to be disappointed, at some point. Even the greats, you think that you should have more, but if you create from a place of love and from your true passion and realizing that this is a God-given gift, you'll never be, truly disappointed because you'll always be existing where you're meant to be. Stevie, oh my goodness, touring with him for so many years. This last one I did this past fall really meant a great deal because when I first started, I was touring as one of his background singers, and then this time I was, a special guest, so I was able to do my own original music. But just watching him over the years, he just gives everything. He just
Mhm.
gives everything to this day. He is 75 years young and looks better than ever, sounds better than ever. And he still is going to give you a 3 hour, sometimes 3.5 hour show. He leaves it all there. Also leads with love. I've known him for so many years, and I've never heard him say an ill word against anyone. He really has that pure light that we hear in his music, in his gift. His spirit is that way as well, and so I have absolutely learned to try to emulate that and bring light to not only the stage but to everyone that I interact with, my fans. And I remember us at dinner somewhere, and it's funny. People will just be like, they'll just yell out, "I love you, Stevie!" Just like. And I asked them one time, I was like, "How does it feel to be so loved and celebrated? Like, do you feel like that impact? Like, we can only feel what we feel." But I was like, do you really feel the um, just the enormity of that love? And he said, "I do." And I just always thought that was so beautiful. But I just remember him being so gracious. We were out to dinner, and people were wanting pictures and to sing for him, and he just, he allowed it. So just that graciousness is something he definitely taught me. There's so many. David Foster, just how to be a showman, and all the amazing charities that he supports and never says no to. I've also tried to emulate that as well.
Very nice, very nice. It's good to be surrounded by people like that that has, that kind of impact on you and, can help, guide you and influence you in certain kind of ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that kind of leads me to my next question. So many people remember you as Dorinda in the Clark Sisters Lifetime movie. How has stepping into that role impacted you as an artist and as a person of faith?
Wow. So first off, no matter what I play, um, after that, I will always be Dorinda. And so that is one thing that
It's
I
good
have.
to be remembered.
It is good, and what a beautiful woman to, bring to life on the big screen. And so that was just such a blessing in my life. I mean, I do tell people it was kind of a bittersweet thing because it was the pandemic.
Mhm.
And so we were nominated, for so many different things, but we couldn't go to any award shows. We couldn't go to our premiere. There's been so many things we really weren't able to do because, of the pandemic. But the flip side of that is that our numbers were astronomical because
Mhm.
everybody was at home watching, so that was
Yeah.
a blessing. And what's so incredible, I'm in New York now working on an off-Broadway show. That's going to be opening at the Public Theater. I don't know if we were going to talk about that, but to
Oh yeah.
connect with that, um, uh, the screenwriter, Jordan, he saw my performance in the Clark Sisters, and without an audition, without anything, he saw me as Mighty Divine, which is my character in this play. So it directly, has given me other opportunities. I also did another a television movie for TV1 called Montrose Blood Rules. I was directed by the incredible Victoria Rowell, and my beloved Jamie, who was one of the executive producers. Her company put this film out. She saw my performance also on the Clark Sisters, and without an audition, gave me this role. So it's been just really a beautiful experience, and even to this day, people, I'll see walking around, and they're just like, I just loved your performance as Dorinda. I felt like I was looking at Dorinda. When Queen Dorinda, when I see her, she's like, "Girl, you had me, girl." You had me. So it's been in such a blessing. And then as a woman of faith, I grew up listening to the Clark sisters. So not
Hmm.
are they only a part of my childhood, I feel like in a way they're part of my DNA, right alongside with the Winans and Commission, which is so crazy. All this gospel Detroit, Vanessa Bell Armstrong, all of them are so rooted in who I am, the Clark sisters included. And so it really felt like such a beautiful full circle faith moment, a kind of a God wink, where God's just like, all of these times, all of these places I had you, I was preparing you for this moment. I remember there was this video I had looked at, there was a church I played for in this little church in Watts.
Hmm.
Off of 108th and Figueroa called Upper Room Church of God. And I was the minister of music there for many, many years. And there's a video of me singing I'm Still Here, which was one of Dorinda Clark Cole's biggest hits. Little did I know that 2 years later, I would be filming a movie about her. But those are kind of the moments where God is preparing you in a humble place. And you have to give it everything you have and really show that you can be trusted with more when you are honoring what you're doing in the space that you are. And so that always is just such a beautiful reminder to me that you have no idea what is around the corner, but
Absolutely.
give your best to not only yourself, but to God, to everyone that you are surrounding yourself with in that moment, no matter how humble you think it is, because that very experience is what is preparing you for the next one. And that has just been such a blessing in my life.
Yes, I can attest to that. And I think that that's a great message because, I mean, what you're describing is your talent combined with maintaining great relationships, right? And that's one of the things
Yes,
that's kind of helped guided you and open some of those doors for you.
absolutely. One relationship, has is just kind of led to the next, and it's been a beautiful, journey. It really has.
And you're a classically trained singer, your music blends jazz and R&B and gospel. How do you come up with something that's kind of, I guess, fresh and modern combined with, some of that classical training that, you've had over the years whenever, it comes to producing music
Right. Thank you so much. I will say just a slight variation. I was actually classically trained on piano.
on piano? Okay, okay.
On piano, yes. In fact, I ended up graduating from Oakwood University with a degree in music, emphasis piano, actually cum laude as well. So
Very nice.
I'm
Okay.
proud. I am proud of that. But
You
I
should
actually
be.
never. Thank you so much, and I'd love to shout out my HBCU Oakwood University as well. Um, Vocally, the church was my training ground. I had no formal training. But interestingly enough, I did listen because of my piano background. I did listen to a lot of classical music, played obviously classical music, and then I started, venturing into jazz. And it's funny, you go back and you think about all the time you had in the world when you were younger. I'm like, why didn't I practice more? I wish I practiced more because now I just feel like, I don't always have the time, or I'm telling myself, although I probably could fill the time in, but I listen to everything, jazz, country, even rock, I'm more of like a, 80s 80s rock girl, but obviously gospel is in my DNA, so that's the core of who I am. That will always be um the center of who I am, even bringing that to other genres when I do sing them. And there was a time where I saw all of that as people having maybe perhaps a genre confusion about who is Sheléa, because you see
Mm,
me on the Clark Sisters and I'm doing gospel music and that's who I am. You'll see me with David Foster, and I'm doing Unbreak My Heart, and I'm doing the Bodyguard medley from that Whitney made famous, and so many other things. Barbara Streisand, I would do a duet with another amazing singer, Pia Toscano, and we would tell him that Barbara Streisand and Celine Dion did. When I was touring with Quincy Jones, I was with the 60-piece orchestra, and I'm doing Misty, his version that he did with Sarah Vaughan. All of those things are truly a part of me. And so there are times where people are saying, well, really, what does Sheléa do? Who is she? And I think I've now come to where, maybe it's an age thing, but I'm just like, you go get all this, honey.
Right,
I
right.
don't have to fit into your box. I
Exactly.
don't have to fit into your box. I have been
Hmm.
able to very successfully be all of those things, and I'm not going to stop to try to, fit into a box that people want to label. And trust me, I don't see that as a, you know, totally negative thing, because I understand that that's kind of the world we live in, where we want to label people,
Hmm.
whatever the situation is. We just want to do that check mark. But there's people who come along where they're all of those things, and that in this case, that is who I am. And so I think, although that has been maybe one of my biggest challenges, I also see it as one of my superpower now.
Hmm.
And
Definitely.
so it does bring, as you said earlier, that freshness, that fresh approach, because there's so many things I'm drawing from as inspiration, when I approach, a song, to whether I sing it, whether I produce it, whether I accompany someone or myself. I'm bringing so much information that I've really studied as a student.
I can see that because when you're a talented artist and you're able to sing, you can play the piano, you can perform with the choir, or you can perform by yourself. I can see that, people can, kind of be like, okay, well, what is she? What can she do? And, she's performed with all these different people. What is her lane? What is her genre? But when you are a multi-talented artist, you have no, I mean, you create your own lane, basically,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's what
yeah.
you've done, because you're fluid enough, you're talented enough to be able to do multiple things. And I think that that is commendable and that speaks to your talent for sure.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So your new EP Spirit is out now. There's a collection of songs. I was just listening to the EP yesterday. Love all of the songs. Talk to me a little bit about the production process and what do these songs represent to you today as an artist? Like, what do these songs represent?
Yes, thank you so much. This new music has been such a blessing. I do have to back up because it started, I would say, about a year and a half ago. I met this incredibly talented guy named Davy Nathan. I was doing an event, and he was accompanying, one of the singers that was singing for that. In fact, it's so funny. It was Eric Benet's daughter, who is just absolutely stunning. Eric Benet and Manuela. It was Manuela's annual event, that she does, this beautiful, beautiful organization she has in a perfect world. And so Davy, just to give you a background on Davy, he wrote all of the songs for Jingle Jangle,
Okay.
which is such a great film, Christmas. So make sure you guys watch that this Christmas. It always comes out on Netflix. And so one of the songs from Jingle Jangle, I think it was called Impossible, or something along those lines. Davy had written that, and that's what Eric and Manuela's daughter was singing, which she is just incredible, brought the house down. And so Davey just came up to me and said, I'm a big fan. I would just love to, let's just come by the studio one day. Let's just see if we can, work on a song together or something like that. Just connect.
Hmm.
And, in this industry, I have had those conversations with a lot of people. But all of a sudden, the next day, I got to get a text. Hey, so how does this date at this time, or this, very specific. And so I said, okay, this guy, he means business, you know. So I think our schedules finally aligned and we were able to connect. And it was just this instant, instant connection. Um, we ended up writing a song that same day. I recorded it that same day. Um, and then we were just off to the races and we looked up, you know, it was like, okay, we've got 3 songs. Oh my God, we've got 5 songs. We've got 8 songs. And so we have the full album. I've just kind of been spoon feeding the masses, you know, these songs, and
Little at a
then I
time.
one at a time, you know,
Yeah.
you know, we can only focus on so much these days, me included. And so now I have this beautiful body of work in the EP of the 5 songs called Spirit, and they're all my babies. You know, they're I call them me and Davey's babies because you know we it came from such a place of love and joy, and I am so in love right now. Which before when I did my first album, not so much. so it was, so I think what people are hearing in the music is just such a lightness, you know, so much joy and love. And I think I'm at a different place in my life as well, you know, as a woman, and so I'm bringing something different to these original songs. I haven't had an original album, you know, in some time now, and so it was just really beautiful to almost just bring all of my experience that I've had since then and center it, you know, on this project. And so it's we brought the all stars. You know, we got Corey Henry and Stanley Randolph and Eric Walls and Brother Funk, honey, and it just all of these. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anybody. The horn players, Regiment Horns. Let me see the strings. Stevie Black, who did all the string arrangements, and of course Davey Nathan, who we co-wrote all the songs, produced all the songs together, and it was just this beautiful thing to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I got drums, bass, guitar, yeah, and keys, yeah. So that was, and then the horns and the strings, and so it was all, you know, real instruments, everybody in the same room playing together, doing it old school. You know, I recorded it to tape. I really wanted it to have that authentic 60s sound, you know,
Hmm.
from Diana, being influenced by Diana Ross to the sounds of Motown and Aretha. You know, all of that was just kind of combined to make this really, I think, fresh sounding retro
Hmm.
retro soul album that is just unapologetically soulful and unapologetically Sheléa.
Yeah, very nice. And that leads me to my next question because each song on the EP sounds distinct, but they're all connected in some kind of way. How would you
Yeah.
describe the journey that you're taking listeners on from the first note to the last?
Yeah, so it starts with Spirit, you know, which is so happy. It's so Motown, and it's, you know, I wrote it because so many times, you know, women are the ones who are like waiting at home and waiting for like the guy to come back from his trip or from touring or from whatever, you know. But from my perspective, it's always been the opposite, you know, when I was in relationships where I was one traveling and I was coming back home. And so that's what that first song is about. It's like, you know, a woman who's traveling and it's like, but I can't wait back. And but while I am gone, I feel your spirit here with me. And it's crazy because so many people have seen other um meanings. You know, they're like, oh, is this, I kind of I took it as, you know, someone who was passed on and I still feel your spirit with me, you know. So it can be so many meanings, but my original intent was that. And then it goes into never giving up on love because that's been my true journey, you know, a true life journey of having had love and lost it and having found it again and never giving up on love, even though, you know, I every time I get online, I see it's hard out there for everybody, you know.
Everybody.
Everybody, okay, not just the sisters, but my brothers out there too. It's just hard. You don't know what's genuine. It's hard. It's just hard. But I found love during the pandemic. And so I can truly say, like, man, don't give up on love because it's right there. Time Machine, it just gives you that nostalgic feeling. Sometimes we all have that person that you wonder, what if? Um, but I just love the way that Never Can Say Goodbye from the Jackson 5, the way that song always makes me feel. And so I kind of wanted to recreate something like that. And then going from there to I Don't Care, honey, because listen, even though mama's in love right now, I can still remember. I can still remember when you are just over a relationship. And um it's meant to be comical. I care about money, I care about my hair, I care about everything in this world but what you doing right now. And I think a lot of times I've said this before, where you think that the opposite of love is hate, but I always thought that hate was just bitter love. But when you really are over it, you don't care. You don't care who you with. You don't care what they doing. You don't care about any of those things. And many times there's not necessarily always anger there. It's just kind of you resign, like, you know, do what you're doing, and I'm gonna do what I'm doing over here. And so that's what that song is kind of like, supposed to very almost lighthearted and comically say, I don't care what your mama thinks, honey, just go. And then the last song on the EP is a song that I actually performed with Stevie on tour. Something's coming, and I just feel like in these times, especially, people are needing encouragement. Just knowing that there's hope around the corner, despite what you see when you turn on the news, despite what you see when you get on the internet. Things can be just so nasty,
Yeah.
and sadly, from the top down. And so it
Hmm.
can be really hard to just hold on to hope, and just believing that joy can be there. So this song is just kind of there to remind you that something's coming. And I'm just hoping that people can hold on to that in these times.
Yeah, that was the energy and message that I got from a few of the songs. Definitely hope, self-empowerment. Those are some of the takeaways that I got from listening to some of the songs, and they were beautifully made. I felt your spirit in each one.
Oh,
So I mean, it's we're looking forward to the next album because this EP was pretty good. So it was a
thank
great project.
you.
So
Thank
I
you.
know you mentioned Oh Happy Day earlier. So I know you're about to star in this off-Broadway play. Now, with you're combining your musical background with the world of theater. How does it feel to do that? Like to be working on this project and working on this off-Broadway play?
It has just been this beautiful dream come true. My sister got me this mug that says I can't go. Sorry, I can't go. I'm in rehearsal. And that has literally been my life.
Mhm, mhm,
Literally has been my life. Every single day I have rehearsal. I have one day off a week, and that's just Monday, which is today. And
mhm.
so, I I am just learning by just being in the mix. Yes, I'm bringing the music and the acting, but theater, honey, is a whole different thing. And I have been telling people that theater is really the last real medium, because music, on the I guess I would say music industry, like, when you're recording in the studio, that can be altered, that can be auto-tuned, that can be edited, that can be, when you're on TV or movies, that also can be edited. Yes, you still have to be gifted at what you do, but honey, theater, you got one shot. That's it.
It's live.
It's live. It's in the moment. You
Yep.
can't alter your voice. You can't throw, all those singing videos we see in the kitchen, in the living room, in the parking lot. although many of those are altered, they are popping those in auto tune and they are acting like they are singing a cappella. Even a cappella videos are not real anymore.
Mm.
But Broadway, honey,
Oh
that's
yeah,
it. That's the last real thing we got. That's it.
yeah.
So an artist like me who has always, I don't want to say prided herself, but has always liked to lead with what's real, you know, it's a beautiful challenge that I'm really up to, and it's such a beautiful script. Our director Stevie, who I just absolutely adore. He is just leading us in such a beautiful way of crafting this story. And so I play the character Mighty Divine, and so alongside um, two beautiful, deeply, deeply gifted women, Tiffany Mann and Latrice Pace, who are just royalty, gospel royalty, of course, the Pace sisters and the Mann family, which we all know. So I'm learning from them every day, because Latrice was in the play when it was in Baltimore. So she's guiding us, and then Tiffany is just, you know, she's Broadway, royalty, and she's just incredible at what she does. And so she brings so much depth to every single rehearsal, the questions she asks, and I'm just like, oh, wow. I mean, it's really, really, really incredible. So I have just been, just almost like turned into a student again of just, learning and soaking everything up, and I've just been getting so much support and affirmation that we're on the right track. We're right now we're in choreography, and it's just so fun. It's really, really fun.
It's infectious to work with people that you admire, right? And people that are
Yes.
talented that you're around because, you're all soaking up each other's talent and experiences and you want to do better because you're next to someone that you admire. You know what I'm saying? So it's good to be
Yeah.
surrounded by people that you respect and admire.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then just seeing it as an opportunity to grow. I remember when I did the Clark sisters for the first time, and that was my first time ever doing acting. And so it was just this moment of like, oh my God, I feel like I'm free falling. But that was the moment I realized that, wow, I can do hard things. I can learn new things. Because what happens is when you do become a master, which I have become in what I do, singing, performing, you know, because just simply the hours that I've done it, the years, the decades of doing it. So when you come to a place where you're, this is now out of the 99% comfort zone of what you've been able to work and master, now you're doing something that, wow, your whole body is learning how to do. And so I'm not fearful of those opportunities. I really kind of lean into it and embrace it because it's like I get to grow, I get to grow, I get to expand, who I am not only as an artist but as a human.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. And so in your PBS special, you celebrate the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. Now, out of all the songs that you sang, which song resonated with you the most and why?
Ooh, how you gonna do that to me?
I know the Queen has a lot of good music. I know.
Oh man. I don't know if I can even answer that. I think I don't know if I can
But just give me
say.
some of your favorites instead of just one.
Okay.
Just give me like a few favorites.
Okay. So I crafted this beautiful, beautiful show with a dear, dear friend of mine, Jules Buckley, who I actually met through Quincy Jones when we were touring back in 2019, and another wonderful, just instant relationship. And we said we always wanted to do something together. And so when he was doing the proms in London at the Royal Albert Hall, he said, let's curate this Aretha show that we had been talking about. And so growing up, I would listen to the gospel uh, album called Amazing Grace. And so I have so many vivid memories going to church, listening to that album with my parents. And so I told Jules, I said, listen, I know we have to do Respect. I know we got to do Natural Woman. Some of those big hits, Think. I know we got to do those. I get that. But what's so important to me about this show is to show how multifaceted Aretha truly was. And yes, she was the queen of soul. We know that. But she was the queen of jazz. When Pavarotti fell ill, we saw her become the queen of opera.
Yes,
You know,
I remember that.
yes, she was the queen of gospel because that was her roots, and she brought that gospel approach to everything, honey. If she was gonna sing
Mm,
pop, she go get that gospel run, very much like Whitney as well. You know, um, and she was an amazing pianist. I mean, she accompanied herself so beautifully, but just her solo on Somewhere, the version that she and Quincy Jones did of Somewhere together, where it starts off so orchestral and then it goes into this jazz, piano and this little quartet. It's sensational. It's amazing. She was all of those things, and so I wanted to make sure all of that was truly and beautifully represented. And because I play keys, piano, I wanted to be able to show that side of her.
mm,
So we opened the show. I was so passionate about this. I said, Jules, we have to open the show with Precious Memories, which is such, I don't think people were expecting that. But to me, that was her beginning. That was her origin story, is that gospel music. And so we started with Precious Memories. And then we also include Skylark, which before she was making all these amazing hits, they were calling her the no hit Aretha because she was
I remember
chasing
that
that.
from the movie.
She was chasing a hit, she was finding herself. And so, but before that, she was doing all these American songbook standards and just singing the heaven out of all of them, And so um I remember where I was when I first heard her version of Skylark. And so I was like, that has to be in this beautiful concert, this body of work that we're going to do. And so that's in there. And then we have Sparkle, which was, has become somewhat rare now, but that's what kind of brought her back out of the slump, where Curtis Mayfield had written and produced all of these songs from, the hit film and hit soundtrack Sparkle. And I think that is some of the best singing Aretha had ever done in her life. I mean, but her instrument was just completely intact. I mean, just her vocal agility, whatever she thought, she did. Just the runs, everything, the range, everything. And so all of those things, so like I love singing Sparkle, I sparkle. I mean, it's just such a great melody. I just love the way it makes me feel. Of course, I love the opener, Precious Memories, because it takes me back to being a little girl, going to church, listening to that album. Skylark, as I said, I love singing those songs because I remember being on a flight and I'm just losing my mind on this flight because I had never heard this version of Skylark before. Um, I love doing the Amazing Grace moment because that's when I truly forget that anyone's there, and that's just me talking to God, just grateful, like, Lord, thank you for your amazing grace. Your amazing grace is what has gotten me right where I am. And I remember that moment so vivid. If I close my eyes, I'm right there at the Royal Albert Hall, and I'm just feeling this I'm feeling the enormity of that moment. And I'm just like, only God's grace. could have brought this little girl from Bakersfield all the way to London at the Royal Albert Hall. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that. And so those are kind of some of the standouts for me that I just, as Sheléa, I enjoy singing. Yes, I love the hits and you know but those the ones I just mentioned that has such a special meaning. And then I also have to put in Dr. Feelgood because my husband's name is Philip, which we call Phil, and he's also a physician. So
Hmm.
it
It just
almost
made
seems
sense to include that.
it just made sense. It felt
Yeah.
prophetic. Come on, I got my own Dr. Feelgood, pun
All right.
intended. So yeah, so those are some of the ones that I just love in the show.
I
And
think
we
your
and we were
approach.
so and we were sorry, we were
No, go
so
ahead.
excited to be able to bring that, as you said, to the States for the PBS special Aretha with Sheléa and the Pacific Symphony, because Aretha was an American artist, and so I have been touring it successfully in Europe, and so I've just been so glad to bring it to the States, and we're now building a tour for 2026 and 2027 as we speak.
Very nice. Yeah, I think that that was a really good approach that you had, putting the Aretha show together because you want to give people something that is unexpected. I mean, they're probably expecting the first song to be Respect, something that's a little bit more familiar, right?
Right.
But the fact that pulled some songs that were some of your favorites, some of the maybe lesser known songs, but they really highlighted who Aretha was, I think that was just a great idea to do.
Thank you. I wanted to take you guys on a journey, to
Mhm.
really show um just who all that she was and still is to all of us to this day.
And you've been described as a powerhouse soulful singer. How would you describe your performances as far as the type of journey? We've been talking about taking people on a journey, but as a powerful singer, as as being a soulful singer, what kind of journey do you think that you always try to take your fans on whenever you perform?
My number one objective and assignment to every song is to be the storyteller. And you got to take your ego out of it. You know, you don't want to sing to show people how good of a singer you are. You want to approach it like, I gotta tell this story. I gotta make you feel something. I gotta make you feel what the songwriter intended you to feel. And that's how I approach everything. And I think that has been one of my strongest qualities as a singer, is that I feel things so deeply. Um, and so I bring that to each story I bring. And two songwriters who I just miss so much, uh, and deeply, deeply adore and just reverence and honor. Alan and Marilyn Bergman are some of the greatest storytellers of our time. They wrote The Way We Were for Barbara Streisand. They wrote Nice and Easy for Frank Sinatra. They wrote In the Heat of the Night for Ray Charles. That right now, three different, completely different artists.
Hmm.
And yet they were able to write such compelling lyrics. They were lyricists for each of these very different artists. And so I remember them telling me that, I had done this version of this song called Will Someone Ever Look at Me That Way, which Barbara Streisand made popular in the soundtrack Yentl, and motion picture where she, you know, directed, starred in, and sang in. Barbara is a whole other conversation, but I have learned so much from her as well. But they said, you took us in so deeply with your approach and your perspective to the song that we completely forgot about Barbara's version. And that was because you captivated us with your story, with your spirit and what you brought to it. And I've always held on to that. That was the biggest compliment that anybody can ever give me as a singer, because that's what you want people to do. You want people to just feel everything that you're saying, what you're singing, what you're emoting. You want them to get lost in their own story of it all, to see themselves in the story, see someone else that they know. Everything I sing, I don't always necessarily have experienced, but I'm going to find my own personal truth in that story. And that's why when I sing Whitney, I'm not mimicking Whitney. I'm bringing my own story to Whitney, but I have been a student of Whitney, so I understand the inflections and certain places where she would add more breath here and things like that. When I do, you know, Barbara Streisand, or if I do Shaka Khan, I have had the honor of being able to tribute all of those women, Deborah Cox, Yolanda Adams, Dorinda Clark Cole. It's like I can't mimic them because there can only be one of all of who I mentioned. But what I can do is I can channel it, I can tell the story, I can immerse myself into um, the depth of what they are able to do, and be able to be a student of all of their, isms, and so that's why I feel like people have always received what I have done. Sometimes people can get, especially the Whitney fans, because ain't nobody can do Whitney, and I get that. But
Right.
what people, in fact, and that's why the one of my greatest, I guess, affirmation confirmation was when her daughter reached out to me, Bobby Christina, and said, when I first did the tribute to her mom when she first passed, and she said, I feel my mother's spirit when I hear you sing, and if she were here, she would be so proud of you. So I don't need to hear nothing from Clive. I don't need to hear nothing from
Yeah.
Sissy.
That was.
I don't need nobody else, because Bobby Christina,
Mm-hmm.
her daughter, who knew her from the inside out, you know, felt what my interpretation was, and it touched her in such a deep way. Um, but again, I got to go back to, because so many times people try to mimic, and you can't mimic.
Mm-mm.
You have to kind of channel.
Yeah, you have to make it your own. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what you've done. I mean, and that's I mean, you're paying homage and you're respecting the artist, right? But you're making it your own because that's what your fans are expecting from you. They want to hear, Sheléa is singing a Whitney Houston song, but your fans know your riffs and your voice, and they're
Yes.
expecting that.
Yep. Absolutely.
So with your background in as a concert performer, as a singer, obviously, where do you feel most comfortable at home? Like where do you feel most, I guess, at home creatively? Where do you feel at home creatively?
Gospel is my home. I always say God gets my best vocal, because that's that's the core of who I am, that spiritual. In fact, I sometimes will cheat a little bit, and I think Whitney did this too. When she's singing "Run to You," I believe she was talking about God. I really do. Because sometimes that conviction, that you hear in "I Love the Lord," that was similar to "Run to You," and so sometimes I'll do that little trick, and I'll kind of make the meaning a little bit, more spiritual. But gospel, jazz, when I'm doing the standards with an orchestra and that just washes over me, I just feel like I'm floating, and so I would say those two. Those two, I would say, are where I feel just I don't have to think. I'm just existing. I love R&B, I love pop, and there's certain songs that are also very effortless, as well. But there's sometimes where I have to kind of like, okay, let me figure out how to craft this, how I'm going to approach this. But I feel like the other two, I just, it's just innate, you know.
Okay, very nice. And just looking ahead, you have a few projects currently that you're working on. You have the off-Broadway play, you have the EP that just came out, you have the PBS special. What do you hope people take away from these projects that you've worked on, and that's about to come out here soon?
Well, I hope that they will see that there's been a lot of intention, a lot of effort, um, and that it was really made with a lot of joy. And so in a lot of ways they are all connected, because on the Broadway play I'm mighty divine, and that character is very warm and very welcoming, and who I am as a person, just love to connect with people and to encourage, and that's what I want my EP to do, and that's what I want this special, when I go out and do these shows doing the Aretha tribute. I'm going to also include some of my songs from the EP, because, like, Never Give Up on Love, that was directly inspired by Aretha. I believe Aretha would love that song. I think Aretha would want to sing that song, you know. And so I feel like the worlds, I'm gonna do my best to combine those worlds, because I do think that they are all connected, and I just hope that people will feel um just that deep sense of joy that music is able to give us, especially in these hard times.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Conversations with Jacquari. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Sheléa and found it inspiring. Don't forget to follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram for updates, behind the scenes content, and more. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And guess what? We have a merch store too. Just go to jacquariharris.com to get your mug, t-shirt, whatever you want. I appreciate you tuning in, and I can't wait to bring you more conversations with incredible voices shaping culture, business, and entertainment. Until next time.